All right, let's get to it. Peace and wellness, y'all. I am the Queen Poe, and my intention for this live is for us to discuss the brilliant masterpiece that is the film SiNNERS by Ryan and Zinzi, his beautiful wife, Coogler. Shout out to the Cooglers. I have to say, if you don't already know, I love this movie. This movie has so many hidden messages, so many lessons. It incorporates so much history. It incorporates so much spirituality, spiritual symbolism. I absolutely love this movie. And I wanted to really give y'all a full breakdown. Baby, when I say, okay, I wanted to talk about this movie immediately after watching it, but I didn't want to spoil it. So what I did was I went live with the wellness community as soon as I came home. Shout out to my tribe, Butterflies in the Sky. I see y'all, wellness community. I love y'all dearly. Thank you for showing up and for supporting as always. I went live with them immediately because I wanted to talk about the movie and I wanted to give them my raw immediate reaction, but I did a live with them with no spoilers. I said, okay, y'all, I'm gonna talk about it, but I'm not gonna spoil it. And I told them, I said, I'm gonna give y'all till Wednesday to go see it, right? Today is Wednesday. Today is the day. And today we are talking about it with spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers, if you don't want to hear anything about SiNNERS, you need to log out, okay? Because I'm going to talk about it in full. I already did a breakdown of some of the spirituality in the movie. I put the link to that breakdown in the description of this video. I posted that yesterday, and people have been responding to that, but I want to do a full breakdown. So again, my intention for this video is I want to talk about some of the hidden messages and lessons. I want to talk about how they did a brilliant job of incorporating various cultures, how they did an excellent job of incorporating various lessons in history, on history, right? From the perspective of different cultures. Of course, I'm going to bring up some more of the spirituality and some more of the symbolism. I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about some of the overall themes because, baby, when I was in the theater, I was taking notes. Like, literally, my friend was sitting next to me. She said, girl, I see you. Because as I'm watching it, I'm literally, like, just taking notes, pulling out my phone, like, ooh, that's a lesson. Ooh, that's a message. Ooh, that's good. Like, I'm pulling it out, okay? I'm pulling it out. So I have my notes here. I'm going to move through the different points. I didn't know how I wanted to do this because, y'all, I have so much to say. I have so much to say. I didn't know how I wanted to do this, so I had to run through my notes like, where do you want to start? How do you want to order this? Because my notes is like sporadic. Because even after the movie was over, I was going back and adding like, ooh, so this connected to that. And I kind of put some things in order. I want to start talking about the movie pretty much from beginning to end, but really, again, talking about the lessons and the messages and the symbolism and all that stuff, right? Now, without further ado, and I want y'all to share y'all thoughts and feels, okay? Come on, Sydney, that 4D. I went to see it in 4D. The 4D was no game. And shout out to Ryan Coogler for choosing to do it on the 70 millimeters and advising that everybody go see it in IMAX. You know, I went to see it in 4D, which we had the beautiful experience, not the detailed experience where we were able to see it, see the film change. From my understanding, people were saying that if you saw it with the 70 millimeter, like in that type of setting, they said that the film was changing orientation. It was changing like all kind of, I don't know that much stuff, but it was saying it was changing a lot throughout and you was able to get like a different experience. I did the 4DX experience where the seats are moving, you getting sprayed with the water, you have like the fog and all of that to feel like you are there. That definitely added to the horror element because we had quite a few jump scares, we had quite a few moments. My only complaint with the 4D is I don't want to be the victim every time. I need y'all to assume that I'm going to be the shooter. I need y'all to assume that I'm going to win one of the fights. Why in every fight scene are we the ones getting beat up? The scene where they were stomping out the dude in the back, why are we getting stomped out? The seat vibrating like we getting stomped. Why when they stabbing up the vampires, why are we getting poked in the back? I said, what if I'm the stabber? How you know I'm not the shooter? How you know I'm not the shooter? Why when people getting shot? Why we getting little bullet shots? How you know I'm getting shot? Why I can't never be victorious? Why I can't never be the winner of the fight? Well, I don't like that. Okay, thank you for the love, Christian. I appreciate the love offering the Cash App. Thank you so much, and may it be abundantly returned unto you. Thank you, Christian. But y'all, that for me was crazy. I didn't like that with the 40X. I said, I need y'all to, where is the winner section of the theater? Where's the shooter section of the theater? Where's the smoke? Why I can't be smoking a movie? Huh? Where's that section of the theater? But if you haven't seen it in 4DX, go see it because it definitely adds to it. Every time somebody get poked or some blood splatters, you getting sprayed with water so you can feel like you got the blood splatter in your face. It was crazy. It was good. I truly, truly enjoyed it. And again, that added to like the jump scare aspect of it, y'all. But let's get into this movie, baby. When I say this film has so many different lessons, and I want y'all in the comments to share your thoughts and feels, but wellness community, y'all know that we are meeting immediately after this live is over because I want us to have a discussion because I definitely want to hear y'all perspective and y'all takeaways and what was how did the film impact you? So we'll meet in the wellness community after this is over. But if anybody has any thoughts and feels they want to share in the chat, definitely feel free to do that as we progress throughout the film. Y'all, I have to say that when the film opened up with Sammie walking into the church, and shout out to Ryan Coogler for casting Saul Williams as his father, as the pastor. Baby, I love me some Saul Williams. I need y'all to, if you are not a Saul Williams fan, you need to become a Saul Williams fan. I want you to go on YouTube and type Saul Williams, Shotgun to the Head, and listen to that poem. Listen to that poem, Said the Shotgun to the Head, okay? And let that be your journey into Saul Williams. He's doing it live. Watch all of his poetry. Watch his poem Coded Language on Deaf Poetry Jam. Watch, he's brilliant poet. His mind is wow. It's spectacular, truly. So to know that he is an orator, he's a griot in real life, and to cast him as a pastor is brilliant work, right? And I just love that. So that immediately I was like, literally in the theater, I did that. I was like, Saul Williams. So shout out to him for casting Saul. But when Sam walks into that church and everybody is dressed in white, I said, Ryan, why you starting like this already? Why you got everybody dressed in white already? If y'all do not know, dressing in white to commune with spirit, whether in church, whether you are doing some type of African spiritual practice, dressing in white to go to the water, to go to church, to be a part of spiritual ceremonies connects back to the continent. That is an old tradition where you dress in white because white is a penetrable color, right? So you can commune with spirit. It is also a color of purification and protection, right? So when you are communing with spirit, you want to make sure that you are protected, but you want to make sure that you are also able to connect, right? So it's very common to wear white, include in the church as well. You'll see the Pentecostal will often do it, right? You'll see that Seventh-day Adventists will sometimes wear white, right? So throughout different denominations, people will dress in white. You go to any Baptist church, the ushers are dressed in white, right? The elders of the church are often dressed in white, you know? So again, that is an old tradition. So to have them in the church dressed in white, I said, here comes the spirituality already. But when the pastor, his father, immediately tells him to put the guitar down, this is your time, you have to make the decision. I immediately connected it to, and me and my friend was talking about this earlier, the color purple. Shout out to Drea. I was telling her, I said, girl, I had that in my notes too. And I wasn't sure if anybody else was making that connection. Just his father, the pastor Saul Williams, telling him, you got to decide what you want to do. Put that guitar down. And insinuating that the music is connecting him to the devil. I need y'all to, or making him conjure the devil. I need y'all to understand historically how that is and what that is and where that comes from and how it still is carrying over to this very day, right? Thank you, Lisa, for the love offering. I appreciate it, Sister Queen, and may it be abundantly returned unto you. Y'all, in The Color Purple, do you remember Shug Avery? Do you remember she herself was singing the blues? Shug Avery was a singer, and her father was a preacher. Her father was a pastor, and he turned his back to her for the same reason. And many people to this day who are in the gospel, who are in the Christian church, get their back turned on them when they choose to go the secular route. So I need y'all to understand how this movie is more than just, a historical reference. It's more than just a reference to Robert Johnson, which shout out to Ryan Coogler, because he mentioned multiple times in multiple interviews leading up to the premiere of this film that he was inspired by the story of Robert Johnson, who sold his soul at the crossroads to Papa Legba, who some people mistake as the devil, right? So he said he was inspired by that story, but it's more than just a story of Robert Johnson. This is the real life experience for many Black people who are forced to choose between the church, the holy route, and secular music. Because it is often believed that if you are not singing about God, if you are not singing about Jesus, then you are conjuring the devil, right? And the reason that this is a problem is because music is a conjuring tool, but it is not meant to conjure the devil. It is a conjuring tool because it helps us conjure the energy of our ancestors and keeps the stories of our ancestors alive. And it really started with blues music. Gospel is a part of that, right? Gospel helps people to conjure the ancestor who is Jesus Christ. Okay, but blues helps us conjure the energy of our ancestors and various other energies. If we bring it all the way back to the continent of Africa, where there were drum circles and still are drum circles, there were ring shouts, and that carries over to Gullah Geechee culture today, where we use the ring shouts, we use the stomping, the clapping, the knee slapping, ham boning, playing the spoons to connect with various energies, including ancestral energy, including the energy of Jesus Christ, including the energy of the Orishas or the Loals or whatever you honor and respect, right? So music is often used in that way. So that opening scene immediately clicked me to Shug Avery busting into that church and singing "God is trying to tell you something," and her father being grateful that she chose the gospel, right? Him understanding, well, in that moment he thought she did, but him understanding who she was and that she still had God in her. So I was like, okay, Ryan, where are we going? Where are we going now? We see what you're doing here. The people dressed in white, the pastor father telling him to put down the guitar. Sammie has to make a decision. And boom, we get carried into the day, okay? We go to Remmick showing up at the door of the two white people, right? So Remmick is the Irishman. Shout out to Ryan Coogler. And let me just take a moment to say this. What I immediately realized with Ryan Coogler, and I'm going to be honest, y'all, and the wellness community, y'all know, I'm not necessarily a fan of the put the medicine in the candy method, right? I am a person who I appreciate when people tell the stories, when people talk about history, and they just keep it real. I love shows like Underground by Misha Green. I love films like The Color Purple. And it's interesting to me because on one side, people will call those types of films and those types of shows trauma porn, right? They will say Roots is trauma porn, The Color Purple is trauma porn, and this and that, right? The Underground is trauma porn because it's telling the story without any candy, without any fantasy, without any sci-fi or anything else. They're making it plain. I'm a fan of that. And I find it interesting that people will call that trauma porn, because when we think about what porn is, it's fantasy, right? Porn is the romance. Porn is the sexy. Porn is the candy. You know what I'm saying? And people will call that trauma porn, but will appreciate when the fantasy is connected to the trauma. So I've never been a fan of people fantasizing the trauma, people making the trauma romantic and putting the medicine in the candy. I wasn't a fan of that originally. Jordan Peele and Ryan Coogler have turned me. They have turned me simply because Ryan Coogler has done a great job of making it plain, but also digestible. He's not sugarcoating the history. He's not sugarcoating the lessons. He's not trying to put too much symbolism on it and give it a different name. And he's making the KKK the KKK. He's making the Irishman, and he's talking about their history. He's naming Jim Crow as Jim Crow. He's naming the discrimination and he's calling the lynchings the lynchings. He's not making this stuff, he's not sugarcoating any of that. He's giving it to you straight. He's giving you the facts, but giving you the facts within a story. And the story is the fantasy, the vampires, the horror, that's somewhat of the fantasy, but he's giving the facts and making the facts the facts. He's not giving you so much candy that it's diluting the effectiveness of the medicine. The medicine is still the medicine, and the medicine is still direct and it's still strong, but he's giving you just enough candy that you can be able to swallow that medicine. And that's what I love so much about Ryan Coogler. So when he has Remmick appear, and Remmick is the Irishman, right? And we see Remmick running to the white people house, and the door opens up, and in the background you see the KKK uniform. You see the robe and the hood sitting. So immediately Remmick knows that these are people who will accept me because I'm white. He knows that his whiteness will get him into that home and get him protected, even though he himself is Irish and he himself feels slighted by people who have colonized his homeland. Right? So this is when we get into the story of Remmick and how Ryan Coogler brilliantly brings in this hidden message, this hidden lesson, because this is the part of the film that I feel like a lot of people are not talking about enough. Remmick, throughout the entire film, makes it very clear that he feels equal, in a sense, to the Black people. His ancestors went through trauma too. Remmick is a vampire. He's lived across centuries. He talks about remembering when his land, Ireland, was colonized, right? So he recalls his land being colonized. He's upset that he and his ancestors had to go through what they went through, right? When he approaches he approaches the Juke joint, he tells him, I believe in equality. I believe that we all could play the music and we all could sing the blues. And that's symbolic of essentially Remmick saying, I believe that we both went through the same trauma. You and I are alike. We are equal because we both suffered at the hands of colonization. And a lot of people think this way. A lot of people will try to address the trauma of chattel slavery, and they will talk to Black Americans and compare their experience with colonization. They'll compare the fact that they, the Irish, were indentured servants. They'll compare the fact that their land was too colonized. They'll compare the fact that their people were slaves in Egypt. You know, their ancestors went through similar trauma as a result of colonization. So they will often try to equate the trauma of their ancestral experience with colonization with the Black American experience with colonization. And they'll try to use that in a way to say, hey, I can connect with you and we are one. And guess what? In many ways, they are right. Ryan Coogler did a brilliant job of acknowledging the cross-cultural trauma of colonization. Colonization from the beginning of time has affected many different cultures in many different ways. But what he silently challenged was the fact that they are equal. And I think he did a brilliant job of showing that it is not. Simply with that introduction of Remmick, where yes, you've been affected by colonization. Yes, yes, your land of Ireland was colonized, and yes, you can connect with the trauma of colonization, but you can look over and see that KKK uniform and know that you will be welcomed into this home and protected because of your white skin. That's why it's not equal. You still have the privilege of whiteness. And that is one of the hidden messages that Ryan Coogler gave you from the very beginning. And this is what makes him brilliant. This is what makes him brilliant. We are literally not even 10 minutes into the movie, and he's already introduced the connection to Africa with the people dressed in white in the church. He's already introduced the battle between the secular music and the gospel music. He's already introduced the fact that Ireland was colonized, but yes, you have suffered from colonization, and yes, you're dealing with trauma, but you also still have your white privilege because you know these KKK folks is gonna protect you. So it's not equal. He's already introduced that, and we aren't even 10 minutes into the movie. I said, Ryan, I just had to sit back in my little 4DX vibrating moving chair. And I said, I'm just going to shut up and watch, because I don't know if you doing this in the first 10 minutes, Ryan, you in the words of Brown Sugar Goddess, give me some Vaseline, because you're giving it to us too raw. You're giving it to us too raw. And that's what I mean with the medicine and the candy. Where do you see how it was candy? Like, this is a vampire running to a house. But that KKK uniform he saw was real. And his white privilege protecting him was real. You see what I'm saying? Let me move on, because we're going to be here all day. We're going to be here. I got to move on. But that's how much I was hit by just that opening scene. And then we get introduced to the indigenous people. So now we got the Black experience, we got the Irish experience, you got the racist KKK experience, and the indigenous experience, and we still only 10 minutes into the movie. Ryan, why would you do us like this? Why would you do this, Ryan? 10 minutes in, and here come the indigenous riding up on their horses. Now let's get into the Choctaw. The Choctaw come up on the horse, and they try to tell the white lady. They said, listen, KKK lady, you done let somebody in your house. We got reason to believe this man ain't no good. He's a vampire. What you gonna do? You gonna let us in? She tried to pull her little blicky. His homie in the back, the Choctaw homie in the back, had the blicky back out. We ain't scared of no blicky. We got we got the switch, mama. What you wanna do? We could go switch for switch. He was ready. I said, show that they ain't backing down. Show that they ain't scared, which again, symbolically speaks to the strength of the indigenous people, because at the end of the day, this is our land. Yes, you may have colonized it and you may have your piece, but this is ours, and we got ours too. We not scared. And matter of fact, I also want to acknowledge, and this is the beauty of the symbolism of him incorporating the Choctaw people, the indigenous people, because their goal was, they were vampire hunters. Their goal was to stop the vampires. But Ryan Coogler, the hidden message behind that is these people have come and colonized their land, and they were still willing to protect them. These people have colonized their land, and they were so focused on hunting the vampires, they were even willing to protect the colonizer, because it's the right thing to do. In this moment, I don't rock with y'all. Y'all are colonizers. Y'all are on our land. But I'ma still warn you of the danger you have welcomed into your home, because in our heart, culturally, that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. Right? Which again speaks to something that many of us know is huge in indigenous culture, is doing the right thing, being wellness centered, regardless of what somebody may have done to you, regardless of the disrespect. Indigenous people culturally have this innate ability, this innate cultural practice of just doing right. just doing right. And it kind of opens up the conversation of sometimes that's what makes us dangerous, and that's what makes us more susceptible to danger. Because naturally, when you are wellness centered and you are a welcoming person, you are a healing person, you are a loving person, you have a tendency to love people beyond your own safety. You have a tendency to love and welcome and help people beyond the measures of your own wellness. So I think that kind of opens up that conversation as well. Absolutely. 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 And our kindness is always looked at as a weakness. And she thought that she was above them. She didn't even believe him. And guess what happened? He was right. And what I love also, because I know a lot of people said that they wish that the indigenous people was in there more. I think that Ryan did it just right, because that's real, right? Because at the end of the day, they were colonizers. We got to always keep that in mind. This was people who were a part of the KKK. And you think them indigenous folk ain't know that? You don't think they knew who these people were on their land, right? I think it's very realistic for him to say, hey, we gave y'all a chance. We warned you. You want to play. Go ahead and deal with the consequences of your own decisions. I think that's very realistic. So him having them ride off, he said, hey, the sun going down, it's on you. Him having them ride off, I love that. And the fact that he didn't turn them into the saviors. I think that that's an important narrative, because honestly, that's a narrative I'm a little bit tired of. I'm a little tired of us, indigenous people, black people, women. I'm tired of us always having to be the saviors, especially for people who have no respect for us. You know what I'm saying? So I love that Ryan did that. He showed that they were willing to do the right thing and they were willing to save. But once it wasn't accepted, they went and they saved themselves, which is something I think we all need to do. But then they get turned into vampires. Okay, so I wanted to, the KKK gets turned into vampires. The Choctaw ride off into the sunset and go home and they safe, right? So again, another hidden message, Sometimes you need to preserve your own safety. You need to preserve your own wellness. It's okay to give a warning, but once that warning is not accepted, learn how to turn your back and go home and be well and let people deal with the consequences of their own actions. Again, the introduction of Remmick was great. The indigenous people being the protectors was great. We get introduced to Smoke and Stack. I got to acknowledge this. Michael B. Jordan. Let me just say, I've been a fan of Michael B. Jordan since The Wire, since he was Wallace in The Wire. I've been a fan. I'm a woman, I don't think Michael would be offended by this. He has many who are. I've loved him as an actor. I loved him for his brilliant mind. I've never been sexually attracted to Michael B. Jordan. Smoke is a different story. Michael B. Jordan, this is how you know he did it well with acting and playing these roles, because I've never been sexually attracted to Michael B. Jordan. I love his craft. I love his art. I love his mind. I love the way he talks about film. I love him as a person, right? You know he can act his ass off. When I'm like, Smoke is fine as fuck. Smoke could get this bullshit. This pussy would have been Smoke's. I wasn't in the stack. That's how you know Mike is good, because it's the same person. But why am I attracted to one and not attracted to other, which just speaks to the brilliance of his acting, because you were clearly able to distinguish the difference between the two, not by look, but by energy. By energy. That man was able to transmute his energy. And that's the depth of the acting that I think a lot of people aren't talking about enough. Yes, his little mannerisms and, Smoke having the twitch in his hand. I don't know if a lot of people noticed that in that opening scene when you get introduced to Smoke and Stack, when Stack is rolling up and Smoke has the twitch in his hand and he's doing little different things to show us, Stack is always smiling and having, just the different, like more friendly, open arm gestures, and Smoke always kind of being a little bit tight, a little bit cuffed up, just the body language. He did a great job of physically distinguishing the two. The energy, the energetic distinction between the two is powerful. Both carried a very different energy. The look in the eyes, the squinting eyes of Smoke, showing that he's a bit more analytical, a bit more observant, a lot more laid back, but also very much protective, right? Brilliant job, Michael B. Jordan. I don't need to tell you. Brilliant job, right? So what I love so much about the introduction of Smoke and Stack is that we immediately could tell the difference between the two, right? And the attire. And I think that a lot of people have to catch this part. If you notice, their attire was a bit different. And we learned throughout the story, and shout out to Ryan Coogler, because on Spotify, you go to the soundtrack on Spotify, he had attached these different articles, right? That you can see that kind of add more to the story. And we know that one twin was with the Irish and the other was with the Italian. If you look, Smoke had more of the, I believe it was Smoke had more of the Irish suit, the Irish attire, and Stack had more of the Italian attire, the big brim, right? He had the burgundy suit, he had more of that Italian machismo look. And then Smoke had more of the traditional Irishman look. So you immediately, even in the attire, you get to see who was with who. And as we now know, they came together and they robbed the Irish and they robbed the Italian, which then brought in the real history of the Valentine's Day Massacre, the war between the Italian and Irish, and tying it to real history again, which once again, the medicine and the candy, it was so much medicine and not too much candy, not too much fluff, not too much filler. He's giving you real life information. And something I was telling my friend earlier that I love so much is that it's not just real life information, but this is not no surface level history that Ryan is given, right? And I don't want to compare and contrast this to anything else, but I feel like a lot of times when it comes to the medicine and the candy, and when it comes to like the tying history to like sci-fi and to horror and to fantasy genres, another one of the things that made me not be a fan of it, I kind of felt like if you do feel like you have to put the medicine in the candy, at least give them some medicine that's not like the surface level. The surface level history, which is still valuable history. I don't want to say everybody, but most of us know about Emmett Till. Most people know who Jackie Robinson is. Most people know Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. You don't need to put that medicine in no candy. That ain't medicine that's worthy of a candy. That's bubblegum medicine, and it's still valuable history. But to me, that's very surface level Black history. That's the common big textbook Black history. In history as a whole, right? But what Ryan is doing is he's giving you the deeper, the more, like, you have to kind of be a bit of a historian, a bit of a history buff. You have to have an appreciation for history for you to know about the beef between the Italian and the Irish, for you to know the full story, the depth of the story. People have heard about Al Capone, but do you know the story of Al Capone? So him tying all of that in, I said, oh, so he's not just giving the big, history. He's going into history. He's giving the historian something to see and be like, oh my God, this is referencing this and this is referencing that. And he did that all throughout the film. So again, going beyond the surface of history and giving you in-depth history. I said, come on now, Ryan. But immediately you see that there's a difference between Smoke and Stack. What I love so much is that throughout the film, and this was shown with Smoke and Stack, this was shown with Smoke and Annie, this was shown with Stack and Mary, Ryan did a great job of showing a balance of energies, right? And I think that that's very common with twins. So one thing that's common with twins is for one twin to be sharp in the other area that the other twin may be dull, right? And they have a way of doing that. They balance each other out. The twins, Smoke and Stack, balance each other out greatly because Smoke was the protector, because he was more of the observer, and Stack was more of the friendly one. He was more of the salesman. He was more of the one to open up and build community. And we saw that later on in the Juke joint scene with the wooden nickels, which I'll get into that as well, right? What I love that Ryan did, okay, and I want to make sure that I get to this in my notes. What I love that Ryan did with Smoke specifically is that sometimes what we have a habit of doing is in films, they will have one character be all the way bad and somebody be all the way good. The antagonist is a terrible person, and then the protagonist is the best person in the world. What I love so much is that he gave nuance to everybody, including Remmick, right? Because Remmick, the Irishman, you felt bad for him because he was craving a connection to his ancestors. He too was dealing with the results of the trauma of colonization. With Smoke, Smoke was a protector. Smoke had clearly been through some things, right? But he gave Smoke some humanity and he gave him some gentleness in the scene where Smoke taught that baby girl how to negotiate. Ryan didn't have to put that in there, but he did, because he wanted to show Smoke's softness, not associated with sex. He wanted to show his softness. He wanted to show that, yes, he's been through some things. Yes, he's a protector, but he also has a heart. In the scene where Smoke goes to the store and he asked the little black girl to watch his car that has his goods in it, right? Something that he did was he said, "I'm gonna give you 10 cents." And the little girl said, "Okay." And then there's a moment of pause. And he said, "Nah, when I talk money to you, you're supposed to talk money back to me." And then he goes on to teach the little girl how to negotiate. And she's like excited about it. And he says, "You give me a number." She said 50 cents. He said, "All I got is 20. He said, "I got a 20. That's the best I could do." And she says, "Okay." And they agree. The power of that moment, another hidden message, another hidden lesson. And that just made like the little girl in me smile. And I always get I talked about this with the wellness community. I always get a little emotional when I talk about that part, because moments like that within community is so important, where he shows that Smoke is a serious man. Smoke is a protector, but Smoke is also a safe space. Smoke also has a good heart. Smoke is also a gentleman. He ain't all the way crazy. He ain't all the way out his mind. Yes, he's a soldier, which Smoke kept saying that he's a soldier, but he has a heart. And for me, the little girl in me smiled because something that's important for me, and I always tell people this, yes, I've been through some things. Yes, I've been through some trauma with men, but I choose not to look at all men as bad, right? I choose not to look at all men as with fear and danger, because I refuse to give those men that power. I'm not going to give no man that inflicted some trauma on me the power of controlling my paintbrush of all men. Why? Because I'm going to give the power and the light to the men who have been good to me, who have been great to me, who have been a safe space from the time I was a little girl to an adult woman. There has always been men who've been good to me and expected nothing in return. I was telling the wellness community, me going to the movies to see this film, a brother paid for my snacks. He paid for my stuff. Like, literally walked up to me. He said, "Can I pay for your stuff?" I said, "Sure." We engaged in good conversation. That man didn't ask for nothing sexual. He didn't try to do anything to me. He kept it very platonic, very friendly, very cordial. It's good men out here like that. And I've experienced that since I was a little girl. So I say that to say, to all of the women and people as a whole, but specifically women who you've experienced some trauma with men, right? And because of that, it may have impacted your perception of men. I ask that you remember the times that a man has been good to you, and you put some power and some light and some strength and some focus on that, right? I understand that trauma can be heavy and trauma can be a lot to deal with, but those moments, like the moment between Smoke and that little girl, are powerful, because moments like that where he didn't want nothing from that, he didn't want nothing crazy from that little girl. He wasn't inappropriate with her. He never physically touched her. He taught her a lesson, a powerful lesson on negotiating and knowing your power as a person, and especially as a little girl, that you got the right to ask for what you deserve. And don't be afraid to use your voice. That was a powerful lesson he taught her, and he didn't do anything inappropriate to her or with her. It showed the gentleness of Smoke. It showed the humanity and the humility in Smoke. It colored his character character beyond just protector and soldier. It really gave him some beautiful, bright color that I love so much. So another hidden lesson, another hidden message, and I think a great way that the women who are in the audience can be drawn in, because so far we have a lot of men dominating the screen, but it was a great way to draw in the little girl in all of us who can recall a moment like that where somebody was a safe space for us. So again, brilliant characterization, brilliant way to color smoke, and brilliant way to a brilliant way to draw in the women in the audience, right? Great lesson. Okay. Now, Delta Slim, played by Delroy Lindo, my favorite character in the movie. My favorite character in the movie. Delta Slim, played by Delroy Lindo. And this is when we got Stack, right? Because Stack is coming in and he's trying to recruit people, specifically Delta Slim. He's trying to recruit him to come sing at the Juke joint, right? This is when I love this Stack so much, right? Because you get to see that Stack the whole time, he's friendly, he's open, but also it painted him as being more serious than what he think he is, because he gonna get what he wants, right? That conversation between Delta Slim and Stack. Delta Slim, played by Delroy Lindo, is an elder blues player, an elder musician. And what I love is that Stack introduces Sammie to Delta Slim, and he's like, oh, this brother right here, this one right here, he could sing, you know, that he's my little cousin, he's good. And then Sammie's about to show him what he got, and Delta Slim sets the tone of, this my area. We ain't gonna do that. Okay, we ain't gonna do that. This my area. You ain't gonna, But he's a good elder, because he immediately starts teaching lessons. And the lesson that Delta Slim taught in this moment, that really is a big theme of the entire film. Catch this one. Another hidden message, another hidden gem that again was the theme of the entire film. Stack offered Delta Slim $20 to come sing at the Juke joint. Delta Slim said, nah, I got a gig over here. He said, I'll give you $20. He was like, you gonna give me $20 tonight. But that gig that I got at this place is consistent. They may not give me the full 20 like you gonna give me, but they gonna be here tomorrow, and they gonna be here next week. They've been here 10 years in the past, and they probably gonna be here 10 years in the future. So I'm gonna ride with who's been riding with me. I'm gonna ride with who's been riding with me. I'm gonna stay loyal, and I'm gonna stay faithful to my community, right? That's a lesson. That's a lesson. But here's how it carries to the theme of the whole film. Delta Slim got a drinking problem, and we learn later on that he's been through a lot of trauma, and the alcohol is his way to freedom. Stack lets him taste a little bit of their Irish beer, something he ain't never really experienced before. He's getting a taste of his freedom, right? He says, I'll give you all the Irish beer you could drink, and he offers a little bit more money. Delta Slim decides to go on. As we know, by the end of the movie, Delta Slim ends up sacrificing himself and he's gone, right? That's a lesson. Because sometimes people who are not for your wellness will offer you a taste of freedom. They'll offer you glitter and gold. They'll offer you big numbers. They'll make it seem like the grass is greener. But at the end of the day, staying with your people, sticking with your community, even if your community ain't got all the glitter and gold that the other side may have, they've been there for you 10 years before, and they're going to be there for you 10 years in the future. They've been riding with you before, and they're going to ride with you in the future. They have showed you consistently that they are for you. Go with the people who's been for you, the people who's been riding with you from the beginning. And even though they may not have all the glitz and glam and the Irish beer, they had the corn liquor that you love. They may not have been able to pay you the $20 or the $40 like they can on the other side, but they're able to pay you consistently, and they've been able to support you consistently. Go with them, because if Delta Slim would have stayed with them, he would have still been living. He wouldn't have been at the Juke joint that night. Right? So that lesson that Delta Slim taught, but then him folding, was an overall theme of the movie, because at the end of the day, The theme, a huge theme of the movie was, what are you willing to sacrifice for a taste of freedom? A taste of freedom could potentially cost you your life if you choosing to be free with the wrong people in the wrong way. What is freedom to you? Right? So that Delta Slim, our introduction to Delta Slim is really our introduction to the entire theme of the movie. It really is. Okay? Delroy Lindo did an excellent job, and I agree he did his big one playing that movie. He did an excellent job because the accent, the facial expressions, the movement in the eyes, and the eye contact when he's serious but looking away, which is showing the trauma, the depth of the trauma that he's been through, showing that he's a man in his own right, but he also is vulnerable, right? He also has this vulnerability to him. He has like almost as though he's like I don't want to even say scared, but again, the best word I could use is vulnerable, which speaks to the trauma. Now let's go to the car ride with Stack, Sammie, and Delta Slim. Another beautiful moment, right? Because this goes to the Conjuring. Delta Slim, as soon as he gets on the screen, he's teaching these lessons. But the big lesson from Delta Slim came in that car ride when they passed the people on a chain gang, and he yells out something, which I gotta watch the movie again because I didn't quite get to catch what he yelled to the brother outside at the chain gang, right? But then he goes on to tell Stack and Sammie the story of his friend who was lynched. The cinematography of this scene, I said, Ryan, you are out of your mind. Ryan is out of his mind. You're out of your mind, Ryan. Because when they're in that car and Delta Slim is telling the story of his friend being hung up and lynched, and they never showed the brutality. And I said, I'm telling y'all, this is the moments where it's clicking for me, because I told y'all how I felt before about people complaining about the realistic tellings of our stories and it being trauma porn. This is the moment where it clicked for me, where I said, I see what you're doing, Ryan, because he didn't show the lynching. He didn't show him being hung up from a tree. He didn't show them cutting off his manhood, as Delta Slim is describing, but you heard it. And this is the juxtaposition where you get to hear the trauma and see the long-term effect of the trauma. Because you're watching the long-term effect of the trauma from Delta Slim as he's telling the story. But then you get to hear the trauma in the background. I said, wow, Ryan. Wow, you hear the rope. You hear the screams. And you see the long-term effect on Delta Slim. Ryan, you are crazy. To even think to do it that way, you are out of your mind. Brilliant, Ryan. How do you sleep at night? I said he got to be the type that wake up in the middle of the night and write notes. He got to be the type to wake up in the middle of the night and be like, ooh, I got this idea. Because what is wrong with you that you would even think of something like that? Brilliant. But here's the lesson. That's the cinematography. Wellness community, you know how I get. Here's the lesson. The lesson. Delta Slim is feeling the effect of the trauma. You hear him going, He starts slapping his knee. He slaps his knee. He's like, You could tell that the effect of the trauma is in hitting his body, hitting his soul. He alchemizes and transmute that energy into blues. He starts singing. Which then speaks to the power of the music. It speaks to the power of the blues. Delta Slim is feeling the effects of the trauma he's experiencing, watching his friend become an ancestor in a very brutal way. Watching his friend be murdered in a brutal way. He's feeling the trauma and transmutes it into music, which then speaks to the power of the music that Sammie's father is telling him not to play. Delta Slim is showing Sammie, not just telling the story, but showing Sammie that, hey, this is what the music is for. This music is a way that we keep our stories alive. We connect to our ancestors, but we also get to transmute our pain into a tool that can bring us pleasure. Music is a tool. It is a tool to conjure, It is a tool to tell stories. It is a tool to transmute energy. It is a tool. And in that one scene, Delta Slim shows all of that. And Sammie, the youth, joins in, which another hidden message in lesson is the relationship between the elders and the youth. The relationship between the elders and the youth, because Delta Slim, when they was outside and Sammie was about to play and he checked him as an elder, Sammie respected him. But then when they're in the car and it's time to ride and he's telling his story and he's transmuting that energy, he starts playing the blues, Sammie is allowed to join in. So it shows the respect that the youth has to the elder to listen and respect his space. But then he gives the elder gives the youth the opportunity to show him what he got. Right? Which then fast forward brings us to the juke joint scene where Delta Slim is on the piano and he's doing his thing. You know, he plays the harmonica, he sings, he plays the piano, he's doing his thing, and he invites Sammie to do his thing. And it takes it to the next level. Shout out to Delta Slim, because to me, easily one of the best characters in the movie. All of the overall lessons came from the elder of the movie, which is Delta Slim. Okay, he summed it all up. Okay, now I already talked about how I said colonization has had I'm going to my notes. Colonization has had a cross-cultural impact. I talked about that. Ryan choosing to have Remmick, the Irishman, be a vampire. Let's get into that. We could talk about Sammie's voice. Sammie's voice and his singing, okay? Sammie from the very beginning was giving elder in a youth body. And I think that was a message and a hidden gem and a symbolism within itself, because the blues music is ancestral. Music as a whole is ancestral. And Sammie having that type of voice that is used to conjure, but is also in tone a connection to the ancestors within itself. It's showing he has a generational voice, right? He has the type of voice that sounds like it comes from an elder, but it's in the body of a youth, which is a sign and a symbolism for the stories of the ancestors and the elders coming through and being passed down to and through the youth, right? So the voice within itself was symbolic, okay? Great choice. Reminds me a lot of Jacob Banks too. I don't know if y'all know Jacob Banks. I believe he's from the UK. Amazing. I love Jacob Banks. Reminds me a lot of him as well. Shout out to Miles, okay, who plays Sammie. And Sammie is truly the conjurer in the media. We're going to get into Sammie, okay? Now, Salam, please. Now, we're going to get into Sammie, but I want to talk about him choosing to have Remmick be the vampire, right? Why would he have the Irishman be a vampire? What do vampires do? Vampires live off of sucking the blood, right? They bite you and they suck your blood. That's what vampires do. Him having Remmick be a vampire over anything else was very symbolic of it within itself, right? Because we know that Sammie has this powerful voice. We know that Sammie is a conjurer. What did Remmick want? Remmick kept telling them, if you give me Sammie, I'll leave y'all alone. We want his music. We want his blues. We want his memories. Remmick, and this is where Ryan, again, brilliant, right? You have to give them a motive. What is the motive? Besides just sucking blood and wanting another victim, he wanted the conjure. He wanted the spiritual gift. He wanted the memories, but this is where he's brilliant because he added the humanity. Remmick wanted it because he wanted to connect to his ancestors. He wanted to connect to his people. That's why he wanted it. He wasn't just trying to be a culture vulture and just take it because it looked good. He wanted it for what some may even see as a valid reason, which the vampire elements, right? Vampire elements. I think you're right when you say vampires are parasitic, and then you said so is white supremacy. I agree with that. But this is the vampire element. Because yes, the vampires will suck the blood, and yes, they're parasitic. But the vampires are sucking the blood because it gives them energy. Right? It gives them an energy. That's why it was brilliant to have him be a vampire, because he's not killing people and just sucking the blood just because. Remmick doesn't just want the music and want the blues and want the memories just because. He has a purpose. He's receiving, it's giving him something, right? It's helping him to connect with his ancestors, which is the energy. Right? So the double entendre there, it's more than just the blood. It's more than just than just the music. I want to connect to my ancestors. I need the spiritual gift. I want to be able to conjure. I want to be a medium, which this is a lesson for all my spiritual people. A lesson for all my spiritual people. There's a real thing out here where there's a lot of vampire energy. And when you know who you are and you know your spiritual gifts, it's quite common for you to attract vampire energy, for you to attract succubus energy, where you can teach people your spiritual information, you can teach them your knowledge, but they want your gift. Teaching them how to get there is not enough. They want what you got. And this is beyond just spiritual gifts. This is with money. This is with success. This is with knowledge. Sometimes people don't want what you could teach them. They want what you have. They don't want what you can give them. They want what you got. Right? That's what we have to understand here. Another hidden lesson and another hidden message. Sometimes teaching ain't enough. They want you. They want what you got. Right? They want your story. They want your life. They want your blues. They want your music, which connecting it back to the white supremacy, connecting it back to the colonization. The problem with Remmick is that you had your folk music. You had your ancestral history, but you want more. You want ours too. What you got is not, because Remmick was killing it on his little ukulele guitar, whatever that was, the poor Robin, picking the poor Robin, he was killing it. I was grooving. I was like, all right, not really my type of speed, but I was liking a little Irishman. Okay, I could do a little something. Pick a poor Robin picking. Okay, I was feeling it a little bit. Why is that not enough for you? You need more. You like what they doing. You like what they got. So you want what you got and you want what's yours, but you also need theirs too. Your gift ain't enough for you. You want more. And to anybody who's on a spiritual journey, wellness community, I always tell y'all, being a dreamer is enough. Why you want more? Having dreams and getting messages in the dreams ain't enough for you. You got to be able to conjure spirit. You got to be able to be a medium. You got to be able to pull this and do that and have what the gift you got, you don't appreciate it because it ain't enough. You want what somebody else got. And a lot of people do this, and that's the lesson that many people need to learn. You need to relax and be grateful for the gifts that you have. Be grateful for the ability that you have. That is the colonizer mentality. And that's another lesson throughout this film. A lot of people have colonizer mentalities and they don't even realize it. I talk to y'all about this quite often because I said a lot of people don't even realize, we could talk about our current political climate. I said a lot of y'all got MAGA mentalities and don't even realize it because you benefit from the destitution of your own people. You benefit from your people being destitute. You don't want me to talk about the free opportunities for education and the free opportunities that people can have to do what they want because you want to sell it to them, right? You want to sell it to them. That's a colonizer mentality. So I need y'all to be very clear about this. And we learned this throughout the movie. And with Remmick being able to turn them into vampires and them coming back to turn their own people. A lot of folks in your own community have a colonizer mentality and they trying to turn you too. They benefit from the destitution of their own people. Okay, so this is not just a white or black thing. This is not just an Irish or black thing. And again, a hidden message in the film that I think Ryan brilliantly showed, that this is not just, all the vampires ain't just white people. When Remmick had that ring shout circle, which I thought was powerful, more symbolism for those of you who do not know, the ring shout is a Gullah Geechee practice. And for those of you who are not familiar with who the Gullah Geechee are, right? The Gullah Geechee people, shout out to my ancestors and my elders, the Gullah Geechee people are coastal African Americans coming from the coast of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. There's actual territories, little islands off the coast called the Gullah Geechee territories. You would have to zoom in on a good map. That's what you say. You got to zoom in on a good map to be able to find them, which is a good thing because a lot of them are what's considered off grid, right? But the beautiful thing about Gullah Geechee people is that we have been able to preserve a lot of the ancestral practices going back to Africa, but blending indigenous practice, blending European religion and Christianity and things like that within the practice, right? So there's a Gullah Geechee dialect that people often compare to like Bohemian or Bayesian, right? People often say it sounds like that, right? So, but there's practices, there's food, the red rice connecting to the Jollof rice. I've done many videos on this. I've talked about this quite a few times. The ring shout is a spiritual practice that connects to the drum circles in Africa. So in Africa, on the continent, people would get into circles and they would beat the drums and they would play different instruments and they would sing and they would chant, and they still do this. And they do this with the intention of connecting with ancestors, with spirits, with different deities and different energies. The ring shout in Gullah Geechee culture is practiced the same way. Traditionally, there's not always drums. It's traditional hand clapping, foot. We say hand clapping and foot stomping, but there may be some hand boning where you're slapping on your thighs, okay? There may be some spoons where you're using the spoons and turn it to spoons into instruments, right? Having Remmick do a ring shout was symbolic. And let's be clear, the Irish have their folk music, which connects heavily to blues music. So you have your own version of this, right? You have they have their dance, their Irish dance, but to specifically have them in a ring and doing a ring shout with Black people that Remmick has now turned is a powerful lesson. It's a powerful lesson and a powerful message because he has converted and has already taken some, but he still wants more. And he's in the center doing the center of the ring shout, doing his traditional Irish dance, which is the sign that he has suffered from colonization. He is dealing with the trauma of colonization in his own right, but he has now become the colonizer. He's colonizing the ring shout and he's leading the ring shout. Okay? While still holding on to his own culture. Okay, so I thought that was a powerful lesson and a powerful hidden message because, as we know, that happens to this very day. That happens to this very day, where people will come and culturally appropriate and colonize specifically Black culture, specifically Black American culture, and then they will repackage it and sell it back to you while adding their own culture onto it. Let me give you an example. And no shade, no tea, because I appreciate you. We have been master manifestors. We have been master conjurers. We have been master visionaries. But a lot of y'all needed a book and a documentary called The Secret to learn about the law of attraction and manifestation. Your ancestors been doing that. Your ancestors been visioning. Your ancestors been conjuring. You won't call yourself a medium, but you'll let the church call you a prophet. Oh, okay. You'll let them tell you that conjuring your ancestors is evil and doing these different practices is evil, but you'll let them repackage it up to you as Christianity, and you will drink the blood and eat the flesh of Christ and call it communion, but then say it's not a ritual. But if you look up the definition of sacrament, it literally says ritual. So they will take your ancestral practices like the ring shout, like having spiritual rituals, like conjuring, like visioning, like manifesting, and repackage it to you and sell it back to you. And you gonna yum, 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 delicioso, eat it up. So that's a challenge to us to do better. And matter of fact, you gonna feed into it and you gonna sell it back to your people. through the lens of their colonization. I say that to say, and this is just my little opinion, right now, Hoodoo is experiencing, and I did a spiritual breakdown. I'm going to talk about the Hoodoo a little bit more. I need y'all to stop trying to colonize Hoodoo. And when I say y'all, I'm speaking specifically to Black Americans. Right now, there's this whole debate over the honey jars versus the sugar jars and which one is better and you know, all of this. Let me tell y'all something. Hoodoo has never been a religion. Right now, a lot of y'all want to be a part of an ATR, but you can't afford initiation. So you're trying to colonize Hoodoo. You as a Black person is trying to colonize Hoodoo, and you're trying to make Hoodoo become a religion. You add in all these unnecessary rules. You add in all these unnecessary prescriptions, and you gotta do this and you can't do it that way. You add in all of this unnecessary fear mongering. One girl said, if you do a honey jar and you put yourself in a honey jar, you creating blockages because you're putting a jar on you putting a lid on your manifestation. Girl, shut up. Shut up. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Stop trying to fearmonger. Stop trying to create fake commandments that don't exist. Stop trying to create all these fake rules and all these fake requirements for somebody to practice what they were born with. These spiritual practices were born into you. These roots, these herbs that grow naturally, that come about naturally, belong to you. Follow your spirit, follow your ori and decide what you're supposed to do. But all of these fake rules that people are coming, somebody said, oh, you're not supposed to use honey when you are doing a manifestation because honey moves too slow. Shut up. Somebody said our ancestors wouldn't have access to honey. Girl, shut up. In what world do our ancestors not know bees? In what world do our ancestors not have access to honey and molasses and different saps from trees? Shut up. Shut up. A lot of y'all have a colonizer mentality that you need to stop. A lot of y'all are a part of the ring shout, but you letting the colonizer like Remmick stand in the center and control the ring shout. You're practicing Hoodoo, but you putting that colonizer, strict religious mentality and dogma onto your Hoodoo. And you're trying to teach it to other people. Shut up. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Hoodoo ain't got all them rules and restrictions. The way honey moves has nothing to do with how fast what you want is gonna manifest. Shut up. How you gonna tell somebody using processed white sugar is better than using natural raw honey? Shut up. That doesn't even make any logic sense. But when you are so steeped in colonization, you are willing to dispel logic so you could sound smart. You sound smart to a dumb nigga. You sound smart to a dumb nigga, and I need a lot of people to understand that, okay? A lot of y'all need to undo and heal the colonization that's in your mind because you're carrying it over to these free-flowing practices like Hoodoo. You're carrying that religious dogma and colonization over to free-flowing practices. You need to undo the colonization in your mind. And not just for the people who are teaching in that way, but also for the people who are looking for it. Why are you looking for the prescription? Why are you looking to be told what to do? Why are you looking for somebody else to give you specific directions? Follow your ori. Follow your spirit. Follow your intuition. Right? Follow that. Now let me get into Annie. Root working Annie. Okay, thank you so much, Virgo Mama, for the love offering. I appreciate it, and may it be abundantly returned unto you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the love. Annie, root working Annie. Baby, Annie is the savior in the movie. She really is, for me, as many of us often are. First, let me just say this. I love so much that they had a beautiful, deep, melanated, chocolate, thick, voluptuous, 2 tons of fun sister. I said, girl, you better put that thickness on that man. You better put that thickness on. You better put that body out, that thickums. Shout out to all my double-digit size sisters. Huh? Huh? Woomy ate that. Come on, Woomy ate that up. Woomy ate that up. Shout out to all my double-digit size sisters. 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 33. Shout out to all my big body girls. Okay? Woomy ate that up. And I love that he put her with smoke, right? Because again, a beautiful balance of energy. Smoke, hold on. Smoke is a physical protector. He's a soldier. He made that very clear. Physical protector. Excellent. She is a spiritual protector. She uses the root. She uses the hoodoo to protect. I love when they walked into her shop and she had the yellow dock or the golden seal. She had the brick dust. She was making the mojo bag for the baby and she gave her the high John. Thank you, Kia, for the love offering. Thank you for the cash app. I appreciate it and may it be abundantly returned to you. She was making the mojo bag with the high John the Conqueror in it. I love that. She's a spiritual protector. He's a physical protector, the balancing of the energies. She gave him the mojo bag, and the mojo bag had been carrying him and protecting him while he was in Chicago dealing with Capone and doing all his business. The mojo bag had been protecting him. She blessed the mojo bag again. She had real Florida water. She had that Florida water with it. What she had a cologne. In no shade to anybody who prefers that, that's your business. She had the homemade Florida water. Okay, she had that where she had the water with the herbs infused at the bottom and she was blessing the mojo bag with the water. Okay, then she had the candle going. She had the smoke bowl going. So she got all her elements. She got her fire. She got her water. She got her wind with the smoke. Okay, and then she got the root with the mojo bag, the land. She says her incantations, her prayers over the mojo bag, blesses it and gives it back to him again at the juke joint. I love that. I love their intimate relationship. I love their love story. Thank you, Stanley, for the love offering. May it be abundantly returned to you. I'm going to shout all of y'all out again at the end. Thank y'all so much for the love offerings. I appreciate it. But I love that. I love that they showed that this is a sister who's working the root. This is a sister who has a lot of knowledge. This is a sister who has a lot of wisdom. And she's really the savior. Because, fast forward to the juke joint, she gives Smoke the mojo bag, right? It's now blessed and it's good to go. Soon as Mary, the Octoroon, and we're going to get into Mary, soon as the Octoroon Mary turns, and she gets turned into a vampire because she thought her white privilege was going to save her. We're going to get into Mary. Soon as she turns and Annie sees that Smoke, you done shot this girl multiple times and she ain't do nothing. Something else is going on here. First, Annie thought that, hey, this may be some haints. And notice, and I told the wellness community this, I said Annie was a real root worker. Why? Because Annie ain't need to pull no book. Annie ain't need to go to Google. Annie ain't asked nobody or nothing else. Annie went into that wisdom. Annie said, I think this might be a haint. They said, what's a haint? She said, a haint is a spirit that can transfer souls through a body. They can transfer the soul out of a body. They can transfer souls. That's important. When she realized that, hey, this girl ain't get hurt by them shots, this is something else going on. She said, nah, that's a vampire. He said, well, what's a vampire? She said, a vampire traps a soul. So Annie, going into that wisdom, immediately explained, a haint transfer souls, the vampire traps the soul immediately. Then once she realized it was a vampire, she said, listen, we need some garlic, we need some wood, you're gonna need you some silver and some holy water. She start going to them roots. This is what we gonna need. Now, what I need everybody to do, everybody got to eat a bulb of garlic, because then we gonna see how everybody starts to react, and we gonna know who is what and what's going on up in here. She immediately starts going to them roots. So she done gave her man the mojo bag to protect him. She knows how to identify what's the spirit that she's dealing with here. She knows how to identify what root she's gonna need to deal with these spirits. I said, and that's how you show a root worker. That's how you show a root worker with respect. You show a root worker with respect and show that it's ancestral, not just by the setting in her house and having the herbs and having her do the workings, not just by her having the offerings on her baby grave. Did you see the offerings with the bottle? Did you see the offerings for the baby on the baby grave? Okay, that she had in the yard. Not just that, but when things got real, she knew how to spiritually identify the energy she was dealing with. And she knew the exact roots to counter that energy. That's a real root worker right there. That's a real root worker, right? I said, come on now. Show respect to the traditions. There we go. Okay. Now, love Annie. Love Annie. Before I get into the whole Juke joint and we get into that, because I'm going to close out. I can't be before y'all long. Wellness community, we still going to meet. We probably going to meet at about 9 o'clock. Okay. Because I want to hear y'all thoughts and feels. Before I get into that, I want to touch quickly on Mary, the Octoroon. I want to touch quickly on the scene where Sammie starts conjuring. But before I even touch on those two things, y'all help me remember, because y'all know how I be when I be talking, my memory be going. Remind me. One point I want to make before I say that. Ryan, get up off that wife. Get up off that wife, Ryan. Leave Zinzi alone. I don't know what y'all got going on, but why is eating the coochie a main theme throughout the film? I told the community, I said, when y'all go see it, I want y'all to take a shot every time somebody mentioned eating poom poom. Take a shot every time somebody mentioned eating it or getting ate up. Ryan, if you needed us to bring the rose to the theater, just say that. If you wanted us, you should have said, bring the rose. That's all you had to say. Bring the rose. The tickets come with a rose. We got a VIP rose package. That's all you needed to say. Why was every other line, every other scene, somebody talking about eating it or getting ate up? I said, Ryan, this is the porn in the trauma. Y'all talk about trauma porn. This is the porn. Even the baby was eating the coochie. I said, Sammie is a baby. I don't want to see Sammie like that. Sammie is a baby. Why are we seeing Sammie swallow this girl up like this? No vampire. Swallowing that girl, eating that girl up. No vampire. What is going on, Ryan? What was you and Zinzi? I said, that's why Zinzi got that baby. He was right in this movie. And Ryan said, let me take a break and go tend to my wife. What's going on? You see, he done grew that mustache past his lip. Ryan, come up for air, please. Get up off that wife, come up for air. Zinzi, take a break. But I know that woman is satisfied. Okay, now let's talk about Mary, the Octoroon. This opens up another hidden message. Well, not even really hidden. This was an overt messaging lesson. Mary, the Octoroon. Let me just say this. Mary was 1/8 black, and in real life, the character Haley, whatever her name is, y'all, I don't know white people too much. She plays her, and she's actually 1/8 black in real life. So they was asking her in the interview, like, how do you connect with the character? And she was saying that her grandfather really is half black, you know. So this is a part of her story that experienced a little bit. She could connect with that experience, right, of being an Octoroon. Now, what I found interesting was she was chasing Stack. She wanted Stack. She loved Stack. She was chasing him down. Stack was rejecting her because Mary had a white husband. He was like, you living life as a white woman, you know, and a lot of people were saying that Mary was passing. I think that people have to understand how passing works historically from and I don't know everything. Let me just be clear from what I know and what I've read, right? Shout out to authors like Paula Lawrence Dunbar, Charles Chestnut, who talked quite a bit about the passing experience, who talked about the blue vein society and things like that. For passing people, for the most part, they predominantly live their lives as white people, right? I don't know if Mary, I know, and she, you know, she was a white woman. She had, and through Stack's eyes, she had a white husband. He freed her from their relationship so she could go live her pretty white life. But Mary seemed to be good with all the black people. So this is why I'm like, I don't think that Mary is so much passing, because she had a positive relationship with all the black folks in the community, right? They knew who Mary was and treated her, they didn't treat her like a white woman. You know, she was treated like a black woman. And maybe I may have missed something. I said, I gotta see it again, because I didn't see people necessarily lowering their gaze when they spoke to Mary. We knew at that time, and a great thing that Ryan incorporated into the film, when he even introduced Mary and Stack, and Sammie told Stack, he said, it's a white woman looking at you. And Stack was like, don't look. And hinting that as a black man, you weren't allowed to look at a white woman. Once he found out it was Mary, he was speaking to her in public, right? When she was in the Juke joint, the black folks was talking to her. Nobody was lowering their gaze. So again, I don't think that Mary was necessarily passing so much, maybe not when she's with the black folks. So I don't know. I would need to watch it again to be able to come to a conclusion of whether or not she's passing. Regardless, I think the main point was that she has white privilege, right? So it kind of brings up the conversation of biracial, multiracial people and how they use their white privilege. Mary was trying to use her white privilege to go get the money from Remmick and his little white counterpart vampires. She was trying to use her white privilege to her advantage, but quickly learned that your white privilege ain't gonna save you, girl, because they done turned Mary anyway. And then she came back and turned Stack, which for me, and I told the community this, I said, the first person who turned him was the one that he knew he couldn't trust in the first place. The first person who turned him was that Octoroon. And I'm not against interracial, multiracial dating. You love who you want to love and you date who you want to date. But like I told the community, you keep that one eye open. Keep that, I don't know if my keep it open. Keep it open. That Octoroon, she thought that white privilege was going to save her, but it ended up being the start of the turning point, really. Really. Okay? I said that's a conversation for another day. Stack her, they had done let her back in and went and took her into that room, and she spit in that man's mouth, which, let's talk about the spit in the mouth. The spirituality, exchanging of the DNA gives you a power and control. Oop, 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 oop. See, the comments moving too fast. The comments moving too fast. I couldn't even catch it. I couldn't even catch it, but I seen it. Somebody said Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp. You didn't learn that lesson? You thought you were special? You better ask Jonathan. You better ask Nate Parker. Don't nobody even talk about Nate Parker no more. Don't nobody even talk about Nate Parker no more. But I ain't gonna go down that whole thing. Like I said, you love who you want to love. I'm for real about this. I truly believe that love is an energy. And you never know how love is going to show up. You never know who love will embody for you. But I think energetically we can talk about love and understand love in that way. But it's also too important to understand the physical reality of the society that we're dealing with and how this works. So my point is, be mindful, huh? Be mindful. Be mindful, be mindful, be mindful, okay? She spit in Stack's mouth and exchanged that DNA. That was the start of her taking over. And she was putting that pum-pum, that ride. And I liked the technique. I said, if I was watching this at home, I really rewinded that because I liked her technique. She had a little roll with the ride. I said, girl, I like a little body roll with the ride. Stack ain't know what to do. You see them knees was meant them, she was sending them up through there. She was sending Stack up through there with the technique. I said, that's that half black. She had a little rhythm, a little roll. That's that half black. Bouncing on it. That's that pom-pom had him where he needed to go. Okay. She popped it off though. Now, I'm jumping around a little bit. I want to talk about the juke joint moment where Sammie conjures and you get to see all the cultures come together, okay? I want to talk about that because I skipped over that and I got to acknowledge that. I love Annie as the root worker in the movie. Sammie was the conjurer. Sammie and Delta Slim, but the main focus was on Sammie, was the conjurer in the movie. I did a video talking about the difference between a root worker, a conjurer, witch, all that stuff, dreamers, all that stuff. I talked about all that. I talked about it. It's important to distinguish the difference. Not every root worker is a conjurer, and not every conjurer is a root worker. A conjurer is somebody who can break or raise the veil between physical and spirit. Physical realm and spirit realm. They can call down spirit. They can conjure. They can call a spirit to them. And they usually are able to choose the spirit that they want to call to them. That's a conjurer. And they can do this in a variety of ways. Sammie's way of doing it was through the music. What's important to understand is that he was using the guitar. That was a gift from an ancestor. Unbeknownst to him, the guitar belonged to the father of Smoke and Stack, who was an ancestor, Sammie's uncle. He's using this guitar to conjure. He's using his voice to conjure. Usually when conjuring is happening, there needs to be some type of vibration, some type of frequency. So it's possible to use a stick. It's possible to use a drum, a guitar, a banjo, hands, feet, the voice, anything in order to be able to conjure. In that scene where Delta Slim is playing that piano, he's singing, Sammie's on that guitar, an ancestral tool, and he's singing, and you get to see the ancestors of the past from different cultures come together with the people of the present day, as well as the future to come. Speaks to the power of the conjure. Not just the power of the music, but the power of the conjure, because the music, the instruments, is a tool used to conjure, right? And yet again, this is what his father, Sammie's father, was trying to warn him was evil, was trying to warn him was bad, right? This is what his father was trying to warn him against. But it's quite interesting because we got to see, and it was beautifully displayed, and of course, Ryan, as many have noted by now, I don't want to repeat information that's been already repeated many times. Many have noticed and noted and compared it to the old juke joint picture that was used in Good Times and many other shows and many elders had in their house back in the day. The old juke joint picture, he really brought it to life, but added to it because he incorporated the ancestors as well as the people from the future and then bringing it to the people of present day, right? So having all of them in one scene rejoicing and dancing was so symbolic. But what I find quite interesting is that we have to always keep in mind that Sammie's father told him it was evil. Meanwhile, they conjure in the church. The choir conjures. The drummer conjures. The organist in the church is conjuring. They're bringing down the Holy Ghost. You're conjuring in the church. When you are playing that piano, when you drumming on them drums, when that choir is singing and that lead soloist is belting and you have the choir director, you have people shouting and dancing and praising because y'all have conjured the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, right? You've conjured. But when ancestors are conjured, it's evil. When the spirit of the ancestors is conjured, it's evil. Again, this is a real message and a real lesson that he's bringing, and both result in dancing. Both result in rejoicing. Both result in getting revelations and foresight of what's to come in the future. We would call it foresight. In the church, they would call it prophecy. Right? Y'all know how it be in the church. When they start dancing and shouting and praising and Holy Ghost, somebody is going around laying hands on belly and prophesied in somebody's ear because you seeing those spirits from the future and you seeing what's going to become, and you're able to now prophesy of what's going to happen up in somebody's ear as you lay hands on them. That's what we got to see in that juke joint scene. We got to see the prophecy of the future with the ancestors from the past in the hands that's being laid present day. You see, That's the spiritual symbolism of that scene, and connecting it to and juxtaposing it to the church, right? Beautifully done, remarkably done, beyond brilliant. And then to have the ring shout happening, like I said, with the colonizer who colonized the ring shout and is leading the ring shout with his Irish dance. Brilliant. Brilliant contrast that we have happening here. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That scene alone is award worthy. It truly is. That scene alone. Okay. Now I'm about to close out. We're going to talk about the whole of everything going down with the vampires. A lot of people was mad at Grace, the Asian woman, the Chinese woman, for calling them in, for inviting the vampires in. And I'm not, let me tell y'all something. I'm not going to sit up here in front like I know a whole bunch about vampires. You know, people was talking about how, because I have a friend who is a big like horror movie buff, and he was talking a lot about the symbolism of the vampires, and I can't get into all that. That's not my specialty, right? I stay in my lane. That's not my specialty. But something he was mentioning was like how like them not being able to cross the threshold unless they were invited in. What he was mentioning was like in vampire films, historical vampire films, that was the tradition. So apparently there's vampire traditions, right? Where traditionally that's how it was for vampires. For me, what I received that as, we cannot be colonized if we don't invite the colonizer in. The vampires represented colonization. Right? I explained that earlier, where they were sucking the blood so that they can receive the energy, right? They represented colonization. As we know ancestrally into this day, oftentimes we invited the colonizers into our homes, into our tribes, into our countries, right? So what my friend was mentioning was like, that's a vampire thing. That's the, I said, oh, I just saw colonization, and him symbolizing that the colonizers cannot come colonize if you don't invite them into your sacred space. Have some boundaries, right? Now, people was mad at Grace. First off, let's acknowledge and give gratitude for Ryan for incorporating the Chinese culture, because many people will ask like, well, where was the Asians? Where was the Asians during Jim Crow? My grandfather, who was born in 1933 in the Jim Crow South, he moved to New York in the 50s. So he was already in his 20s, already had a wife and 3 children. He moved to New York in the 50s, and he experienced the Jim Crow North, right? So my grandfather always, you know, I would ask him 1,000 questions and he would answer. And he told me what was going on, and how my grandfather described Asians is very much how Asians occupy the Black community now, where they have their stores, they'll have their restaurants, beauty supply stores, their businesses and stuff like that. So they were in the community, they did business with the community, but they always had their own spaces, right? And I think Ryan did show that in the film, where he showed that the Chinese couple had their white, they adhered to Jim Crow. They had their white-only store on one side and their colored store on the other. They had the business in the community. They was cool with the community, but they had their own space, right? And it was almost like a mutual love and respect. I appreciate Ryan for that, because something that, and we got to check our own privilege. Something one of my coworkers told me, she was an Asian girl. She told me, you know, we was just talking about the lack of representation in mainstream media. And she was like, when do you see Asians? And I had never thought about that, right? Because again, acknowledging my own privilege, right? I'm a Black woman. I'm always thinking about the Black community. I had never even thought about like the amount or lack thereof Asian representation. And Ryan having adding that narrative, because they were a part of the story too. They were a part of the history too. And very rarely are they shown, you know? So I love that he added them to the story, right? Important. But people was upset with Grace because she invited them in. I think it's important to note that Grace's child was at threat. She was a mother, you know? So this is when we can't forget the humanity aspect of it. Grace is a mother. Her child was at threat. Her husband had already been turned. She knew it. Her child was at threat. She didn't have nothing to lose at that point. her family is all she got. And that was characterized with Grace back in the store. When Smoke showed up to the store, and Grace was like, hey, are we sure this is a good decision? He already bringing trouble. Like, we got to protect what's ours. Grace was always family oriented, which, let's be honest, that's how a lot of Asian people operate. They are very community centered. They are very family oriented. We cool with them, but we got to protect what's ours. We got to protect our own. Like, we got to protect our family. And Grace had that mentality from beginning to end. So I understood. I didn't like it, but I understood she was true to her character, right? So I think it was that's exactly, and that's not a bad thing. She was community oriented. That's not a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? She was doing what she was supposed to do. You may not have wanted her to do that. You said she could have went out there by herself. Now, I agree with that too. That's why I said I didn't agree that she invited them in. Girl, you could have went out. Okay. But I think she also thought that I think she genuinely thought that they could defeat them, right? Because at this point, Annie had already given the herbs. She already given the root. She already given all of that. I want to take a pause because, again, I'm jumping around a little bit. I know I want to go back a little bit. I got to talk about the wooden nickels. I talked to the wellness community about this. Again, Ryan adding those little nuances of history for the historians. Told y'all my grandfather was born in 1933, right? My granddaddy had all them old countryman sayings, right? My granddad used to say, don't take no wooden nickels. That was something he would always tell us when we would get off the phone with him. Don't take no wooden nickels. Don't take no wooden nickels. You know, make sure you get your lessons. You know, that was always one of his things. But I remember asking my granddaddy one day, I said, Granddaddy, what is the wooden nickels? Like, why do you always say that? I knew what it meant, but I never understood, like of all things, why say wooden nickels? And he told me back in the day, you know how we have gift cards today? Like, say, for example, you go to a store and the store doesn't do refunds, but they do store credit. So they may give you a gift card, right? Well, now everything is digital. They'll just attach your store credit to your phone number. Before there was gift cards, there was wooden nickels, where you had these little coins that were made of wood, and it would have the store stamp on the front and a currency representation on the back. So it would say like 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever. The hustle back in the day, my granddaddy said somebody would pay for something with a handful of change, and in the change, it would be some wooden nickels. So they would be shorting you because you can't use the wooden nickels nowhere but that store, right? So when you hear the saying, don't take no wooden nickels, don't take no wooden nickels, they're telling you not to take no shorts, not to take no lies, because people would try to finesse you by giving you a handful of change with some wooden nickels in it, right? In this film, so a brother is at the bar and he's trying to pay for a drink and he's short. He got some coins. He's like, all I got is this. It costs, let's say, he's like, cost 40 cents. All I got is 30 cents. But I also got this amount in wooden nickels. He's like, you could use it at this general store, and get your store credit. Then there's like a beef. Smoke is upset. Him and Stat go back and have a conversation of whether or not they're going to accept the wooden nickels, right? But again, Ryan didn't have to put that in there. My granddaddy told me this many, many moons ago. My granddaddy transitioned in 2021. 87 years old he was, right? I think 87, something like that. Y'all my math. But you know, I never thought about the fact that my granddaddy told me this years ago. I'm a film person. I'm a documentary person. I've never seen the wooden nickels. I've never seen the wooden nickels. I never saw anybody, and can't recall it off the top of my head. Not to say it's never been done. I can't recall it. I never saw somebody put that in a movie. I never saw somebody put that in a doc. I've never seen the wooden nickels. For him to incorporate the wooden nickels, I was like, Ryan, you are truly a historian. You are truly putting so much in, Ryan. You did not have to, because you are incorporating a Black historical saying of don't take no wooden nickels and showing the root, the history connected to it. Again, a whole lot of medicine in that little bit of candy, baby. Whole lot of medicine in that little bit of candy. Whole lot of medicine, okay? Now, bringing it back up to where we was. Grace invites them in. At this point, Remmick has turned Cornbread. Shout out to Cornbread. Cornbread had all of a good 10 minutes on the screen. I loved Cornbread. Very charismatic. He had all of a good 10 minutes. I said, get. Give Cornbread a sequel. Let Cornbread be in the sequel. I got an idea for a sequel too. I'm going to talk about that at the end. Y'all remind me. Cornbread had already been turned. Quite a few people had already been turned. It's Pearline, Annie. This is the scene when they come in. Okay, we got Pearline. Oh, Pearline. I ain't even mentioned Pearline. Shout out to Pearline. Okay, who was getting yummed up by Sammie. We got Annie. We got Smoke. Stack had already been turned by Mary. I talked about that. Who we got over here? We got Sammie, Delta Slim. And who? Oh, Grace, the Asian woman. We got Grace, right? So this is who's left, right? Ready to battle. Now, they start battling it out. Everybody's slamming. Let's talk about Delta Slim, the elder, sacrificing himself for the youth. Let's talk about that. The elder sacrificing himself for the youth. I love that. I love that Delta Slim said, hey, y'all go do what y'all got to do. I got this. And he was willing to sacrifice himself for the youth, which again, hidden message, hidden meaning, very symbolic of how it should be today, where you should see the light in the youth and you should see what the youth are able to accomplish and be willing to speak love and speak light and instill your lessons and trust that they have all it takes to carry it on. Very symbolic. Hold on. Now, let me go to Annie making the agreement with her man Smoke. Another thing that added to Annie's root working lore is that she was always considering the ancestor realm. She knew that vampires can't become ancestors because they're trapped souls. She said that. She said vampires can't become ancestors. She made an agreement with Smoke that if I get bit, I need you to kill me before I turn because I need to go see my baby. She said, I got somebody waiting for me. She knew she wanted to be an ancestor, so she made an agreement with Smoke to do her in so that she could become an ancestor and wouldn't turn into a vampire. And he did. He did. And you notice that when they had came in and they start biting everybody up and they fighting, they had bit Annie. They saw that Smoke was about to hurt Annie. He was about to kill her before she could turn. And all of the vampires had a visceral reaction. All of them was like, like shocked. They was upset. They was hurt. I want to say this. People are debating back and forth about why they were upset. Some people say, oh, they just wanted another member. Keep in mind, Remmick had told them, he said we want Sammie. He said we want his blues, we want his music, we want his memories. We want his memories. They wanted her knowledge too. They knew she would be helpful if she was on their side. We got to remember, the vampires represent colonization. Remmick was collecting a variety. He knew he needed Stack for what he could bring to the table. He knew he needed Cornbread for the protection for what he could bring to the table. He knew they needed Pearline because he wanted the music. He wanted the voice. He had Pearline singing, right? We need her. We need her. He wanted the knowledge and the wisdom of the root work in Annie. That's why he was so upset. Stack was the one who turned Annie. He was the one who bit Annie because he knew what Annie could bring, right? So we got to keep that in mind. We got to keep that in mind. Smoke and Stack, it's just the two of them. Smoke has the opportunity to kill Stack, but we find out later on that he didn't. He made an agreement that if you leave Sammie alone, you do your thing. He couldn't hurt his brother, right? Which again speaks to the humility, Delta Slim is gone. Pearline got turned. Grace burnt up with her man. It's Sammie. Annie is gone. She's now an ancestor. It's Sammie and Smoke left. They're battling it out. Remember, let's rewind. Annie gave the roots. Annie said to defeat them, we need silver, we need wood, we need holy water, and we need, what was the other thing? Garlic, right? She said that. They were playing Sammie. All of them had chewed the garlic, right? So the garlic was in them. Now they're at the water. Remmick and the whole vampire crew is in the water. Smoke is battling Stack, and he's making the agreement with Stack back at the Juke joint, right? Sammie is in the water. Remmick is about to bite Sammie. Sammie hits Remmick with the guitar from the ancestor passed down from the father. What is the guitar made with? Wood and silver. They're in the holy water. They're in the baptism water. 3 parts of the roots they already got. And Sammie had ate the garlic, right? That's the 4th part of the roots. Then here comes, so that slows down Remmick, right? It slows down Remmick. Salam. Y'all, my dog barking, sorry. But it slows down Remmick, and it gives enough time for Smoke to get there and finish Remmick off by stabbing him with the wood, right? So again, that root work and wisdom still coming through. Right? The root work and wisdom. The sun comes out, the other vampires burn up, the battle is over. Sammie goes to the church. His father tells him to make a decision. Smoke goes off. Now Annie, everybody is gone. Smoke goes off, and he's about to go finish off Hogwood in the KKK. This is important right here, this scene, because Smoke, at this time, he's done. He's lost Annie. He's lost his brother. He's done. He snatches off that mojo bag, which is a sign that he knew that mojo bag the entire time had been protecting him. He snatches off that mojo bag. He's ready to go. He goes to roll him a cigarette, but remember, he has the trimmer. So he's dealing with the trauma, but also he has the trimmer, which speaks to the relationship with his brother, because remember, Stack was the one who was always rolling and handing him the cigarette. He has the trimmer in his hand, so he could barely roll. He's recalling everything they had been through, which is exacerbating the tremor. He could barely roll up. Here comes Hogwood, the KKK member, about to do his business. Long story short, Smoke shoot everybody up, the whole KKK. Which was very symbolic, right? Because Smoke had defeated the vampires who represented colonization, the KKK, the white supremacists, who are a huge part of the colonization. Smoke, 1-to-1, knowing that he was a soldier, took them all out, right? Despite dealing with his own trauma, despite what he had been through, he was still thinking about the futures of the future generations. During that battle, Smoke gets hit. He's leaking out. He's killed most of them. Only Hogwood is still alive, the big one. Smoke is slowly transitioning. And then this is where we get into my idea for a sequel. Smoke is slowly transitioning. As he's slowly transitioning, he's doing what's called the Ancestor Walk. A lot of people don't know about the Ancestor Walk. See, I'm a death doula. I'm a full spectrum doula. I'm a birth, postpartum, and death doula, right? As a death doula, as somebody who's been in many hospice rooms and has helped many people, I don't like to say many, because many could be a lot, but I've helped quite a few people, double digits, transition, including some of my own family members, 2 of my own family members, helped them transition. Let me just say this. With the Ancestor Walk, what happens during that time, when somebody is transitioning, you will see them often, they're looking up, sometimes their eyes are closed. They'll start calling out names of their ancestors. You'll see them looking around the room. When my cousin was transitioning, the sun brightly shone, like it just got super bright in the room. And my cousin was transitioning. We knew the ancestors were coming. That's called the Ancestor Walk. You'll see their ancestors, they'll see their ancestors welcoming them to spirit realm. So this is what's happening with Smoke. He's slowly transitioning, and his ancestor, who's Annie, and their baby that they lost, are coming to walk him to the spirit realm, the Ancestor Walk. She tells him, put that cigarette down. I don't want no smoke to get on this baby. And then she calls him Elijah, his name. That was a double entendre, because it wasn't just about the cigarette smoke. She was telling him to release that soldier energy, release that smoke persona, and be your authentic self, right? You an ancestor now, which is symbolic of the cleansing of an ancestor. This is where we're going to get into a little spiritual talk. A lot of people ask me, like, well, Queen, I want to venerate my ancestors, but I know that this ancestor necessarily wasn't the best in life. This person may have had addiction, or they may have done some bad things. So how do I work with them? And I always tell people, your ancestors can be cleansed. They can be cleansed. So that's what's symbolic of the cleansing, right? when your ancestors when your elders transition to ancestors, they do an ancestor walk, right? There is a cleansing, there is a transition, and you can help with that in many ways. And we talked about that. That's a whole nother video for another time, how to welcome an ancestor to an altar. Okay, so we can talk about that. Wellness community, y'all already know that the 9-day altar ritual, and we talked about those things in the spirit water and the cleansing of the names, right? Those are physical things you can do on this side to help cleanse them, but there is a spiritual cleansing that happens. That whole scene was symbolic of that spiritual cleansing. Her telling him to put that smoke down, I don't want no smoke to get on this baby, was a sign that you are coming to ancestor realm. You are cleansed of the sins of being the smoke, the person that you were. You're cleansed of that. You are restored. You are now Elijah, which was beautiful, right? So again, great symbolism, great messaging. But before he does it, he finishes off Hogwood, which was symbolic for Smoke choosing to put an end to white supremacy. He's defeated, he had the opportunity to defeat the continuation of colonization, and he didn't do that by keeping Stack alive, by keeping his brother alive. He let his brother live, which means colonization continues. But he defeated these white supremacists so that no other black people would have to deal with what they were doing to the black people who were buying their juke joint. Remember, the KKK was constantly killing all the black people who was buying that juke joint. This was a cycle. They knew this was the plan. So he put a stop to that. But this is where we get the sequel. We never see Smoke turn to white. We never see his garb become white. We never see him fully cross into ancestor realm. He holds the baby, and that's it. Then we go to the credits, then we get the mid-credit scene, which I'll talk about, right? We never see him cross to, he did the ancestor walk, which is a process during transitioning, but we never see him become an ancestor, right? I need y'all to understand, it's possible for people to do the ancestor walk and still be physically saved. The ancestor walk occurs when somebody is experiencing the process of dying. We never see Smoke die. We never see him become an ancestor. His clothes never turn to white. He never becomes an ancestor. He just does the ancestor walk. Opens it up for a sequel. Opens it up for a sequel. Stack, we have the credits roll. Stack comes in. It's now the 90s. We know that Sammie has made the decision to, because his father, it goes back to the church scene. Sammie has made the decision to continue on with music, right? Continue on. We go back to the church scene. He said, his father tells him, you got to pick. Sammie walks out, gets in the car, and he's riding alone, which isn't that beautiful, because when it was Stack, Sammie in the car, Sammie asked Stack to drive, and he said, you could drive on the way back. And Sammie ends up driving, but he's driving the car alone on the way back at the end of the night. He's driving the car alone. Isn't that symbolic? But anyway, Sammie chooses to go on and keeps playing the blues. Forward to 1992, he's now Buddy Guy. He's now older Sammie. He's in the club. Stack walks in because Stack is a vampire, a trapped soul. He's still living in the 90s. He has on his Coogee sweater and his Jesus piece, which I mentioned in my spiritual review that Jesus piece represents the continuation of colonization. He has on his Coogee sweater, meaning he's fast forwarded to the 90s and the colonization continues. He has on the Jesus piece, right? Sammie asked Stack, didn't you feel free for just that moment in the juke joint before the sun went down and everything went bad? Didn't you feel free? Stack says, yeah. That was the last time I saw my brother, and that was the last time I saw the sun, because now he's a vampire. He can't see the sun, right? Very symbolic, very symbolic. Sequel. My idea for a sequel. Listen, Smoke has done the ancestor walk. He hasn't fully transitioned. He's done the ancestor walk. He sees root work in Annie. Annie lets him hold the baby. Sequel opens up. She takes the baby back and let him know it's not your time. It's not your time. I'm an ancestor now, so I could see more than what I saw, than what I knew in physical realm. This is how you defeat a vampire. This is how you turn a vampire back and she gives him a root. She gives him a remedy to turn a vampire back, to untrap a soul. This is how you can untrap a soul. She gives him a root to untrap a soul. This is a sequel now. Over the years, right? Sammie spends time turning Pearline back, turning Cornbread back, getting Delta Slim back. He spends time getting his people back, turning back his people. This is symbolic and representative of what we often do, where we will deconstruct the minds of our people. Remember, the vampires represent colonization. Throughout the years, we have been spending time through the Black Panther Party, through the Communist Party, the Chalamumba Club, through the return to people from the church, deconstructed from Christianity and returning to African spirituality. We've spent many decades decolonizing the minds of our own people. Him turning them back using this root is representative of him decolonizing the minds of his people. He gets Pearline back. He get Delta Slim back. He get Cornbread back. He get his whole team back, right? The last one is his brother. But his brother is loving vampire life. His brother is loving that life as a colonizer. He's loving the power that, remember, Stack loves the power. Stack loves the energy, which a lot of our people with colonized mindsets do. They love the power that it gives them. They love the supremacy that it gives them. He's battling his brother to turn his brother back. So there's a battle between the people, the community, and the vampires. Smoke versus Stack. And I know Ryan Coogler, I saw an interview, he said this is not going to be no sequel. Ryan Coogler said that. He said this is not going to be no sequel. I didn't write, he said I did a lot of franchises. I didn't write this to be no franchise. He said right now the answer is no to a sequel. I'm telling you right now, Ryan, we will not accept a no. We the people will not accept a no. Because to have a sequel where it's Smoke, the twin, whose goal is it to deconstruct the minds and decolonize his people, versus his brother who is thriving off of the supremacy of colonization, that would not only be symbolic, there's a lot of history over the different decades, because again, he would be crossing decades. There's a lot of history over the decades. You could bring in the Black Panther Party. You could bring in the NOI, the Nation of Islam, and how they tried to do the work over time to decolonize the mind. You could bring in even the Black Lives Matter movement. You could bring in the different movements to decolonize the people and build community. That's when you could talk about Seneca Falls. You could talk about Tulsa. You could talk about different ways that they build thriving communities. You could show Smoke and Delta Slim and Cornbread and Pearline and Sammie building thriving communities. Matter of fact, when Stack comes to see Sammie playing at the Juke joint is in their community. Stack just stopped by because he wanted to say hey to his brother, Smoke. He wanted to see his people one more time. He said, it's the last time I seen my brother. I'm just saying a sequel is possible, and it's a lot you could do with it, Ryan. So we the people don't accept a no. We don't accept a no. Okay. Now, overall theme, I want to close with this. Overall theme, I think I've said it multiple times. This movie was very layered. It opens up many conversations about colonization, about the effects of colonization across cultures, because we saw the effect on the Irish. We saw the effect on the Asians, where they had to have their colored-only store in their white store, them being very community-oriented. We saw the effect on the indigenous people, them being willing to protect the colonizers, but still choosing to like, hey, we gonna go, y'all deal with what y'all gotta deal with, right? And then, of course, showing the effect of colonization on the Black community by Remmick wanting his memories, his music, his blues, him colonizing the ring shout and controlling the ring shout, him taking the people and colonizing the people, right? A lot of lessons on colonization, lessons on brotherhood, lessons on community, right? Lessons on balancing energies, the balance between Smoke and Stack, the balance between the spiritual protector that is Annie and the physical protector that is Smoke, right? The balance of understanding, I don't want to say balance, but understanding the value of not being so welcoming all the time, right? That is important, right? But when I say not being so welcoming, Stack was too welcoming to to marry. Stack's spirit, his intuition told him to leave Mary alone. And he tried to turn her away multiple times, but he ended up falling for that divine feminine okey doke. Okay, he ended up falling for it. It ended up becoming his downfall. Us being too welcoming as a whole, right? And when I say too welcoming as a whole, that Asian woman welcomed them people in, and they had welcomed that Asian woman in. This was the juke joint for the black folks. The Asians were supportive and they loved them, but what was she doing there? Okay, too welcoming, okay, too welcoming. All right. So us being too welcoming in multiple ways, right? So that was a lesson, huh? That was a lesson. But I really think, aside from the colonization, aside from the balancing of the energies, aside from being too welcoming, this film was also about the importance of preserving your culture, preserving your history, having knowledge of self and knowing who you are, knowing your identity, with that, whatever culture you identify as, right? Because Remmick, being an Irishman, you had your folk music, you got your culture, value that. The indigenous people have their culture, they value that. That's why they walked away. You know what I'm saying? You have the Asian couple, they have their culture, value that. And Grace did value that. And that's why she was trying to get her man to get smoke up out that shop and let's mind our business and stay with our people and do our thing, right? For black people, specifically black Americans, you have your culture, value that. It's important to note that a huge theme is that we are all sinners, right? The film is called Sinners. We are all sinners in the eyes of somebody else. In the church, through the lens of the church and through the lens of colonization, our history, our culture, our spiritual practices is a sin. The true sin, through people who still practice that, is choosing to participate in colonization. When you realize that you are colonized, when you realize you are practicing the colonizer's religion, when you realize that you are engaging in the colonizer's capitalistic practices, when you realize you are colonized and you still choose to continue on colonization, that is also a sin. So we are all sinners in one way or another. How do you identify? Preserve your culture, respect your culture, be mindful of your judgments of others and their identity, right? So I think that was a huge part of the film, was who are you? Who are you? What is your history? What is your culture? As we would say in the South, you know, again, my mother's people come from the South, my father's people come from Panama. As my Southern people would say, where your people from? Who your people be? Huh? Who are you? Where your people from? Who your people be? What is your identity? What is your history? What is your culture? And respect it. Don't let anybody deter you from the root of who you are. Roots was a huge part of this film. Who is the root? What is the root of who you are? That was a huge lesson in this movie. That was a huge lesson in this movie, okay? Who are you? And put some respect on that shit. And you make other people put some respect on that shit, okay? That's my thoughts and feels, wellness community. I'm about to drop a Zoom link for us to gather, and y'all can share your thoughts and feels. I ain't gonna do no talking because I did all my talking here. I want to know what y'all thought and what y'all felt about it. I'll see y'all at 9:30. It's 9:17. I love y'all dearly. Thank you to everybody who sent a love offering. Let me shout y'all out. Hold on real quick. Let me shout out Jay, Garland, Leslie, April, Stanley, Kia, Nefertina, Charisma, Naquan, Christian, and Destiny. Thank you so much for your love offering. May it be abundantly returned unto you. May you forever and always be blessed, generation upon generation. I thank you for your thoughts, your prayers, your good energy, your financial support and abundance. I really appreciate it. Thank you thank you to everybody for supporting me. Y'all be sure to subscribe, like, share, And I will see y'all tomorrow. I'm going to be going live to discuss our upcoming new moon in Taurus, which peaks on April 27th. And the shadow period for that starts tomorrow, which is April 24th. So I'll be going live. I'll see y'all tomorrow to discuss our upcoming new moon in Taurus. Wellness community, I will see y'all at 9:30. All right. I love y'all dearly. Thank y'all so much for watching. Thank you for your commentary. And I will see y'all soon. Much peace, y'all. Good night.